Whispers from the Brighter World, Saturday, August 19, 2000, 10 a.m. When we say that the human being has no true friends on earth, we mean it in the sense that God alone is our true friend. He never disappoints us. He is reliable, and until the end, He is and remains our recourse, whatever happens here, below, and beyond this existence. Babuji.
Yeah, anybody would like to sort of, express their views, you can put them in the chat box. Raghunath, there's a mark on the screen. Not sure what it is. Is it there for everybody?
Yes.
Yes, brother.
I'm not sure how to take that off.
It's okay, sir. No worry.
You can erase. I think there's that annotate thing if you see on the left. I think that can be used to erase it. No, on the I think it's Zoom thing.
On the Zoom itself, right? Okay.
On the left-hand side, I see it. I don't know where you will see that. Annotate, no, where you can get the laser pointer and all that.
Okay, okay. I got two screens. I'm trying to see them. Annotation. Annotate is here. Okay. Then I get.
I think there's eraser there. You can try, see if you can.
Eraser. Okay.
Does it go off?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure how it came in the first place, though.
I think anyone can go and draw on the screen. Somebody might have accidentally dragged. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay. So now I need to share this. Share. So are you all able to see my screen now without any scratch or something like that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. So welcome to you all. And again, so we'll talk about this book Towards Infinity in the next sessions now. So this is a very short book, as you all probably know, and many of you have read it several times. So it will be a sort of a reread for many of you. So if you look at the book, the objective of the book is essentially aims to describe the journey of consciousness and explain some states and conditions at the different stages of consciousness. I think, this is something, which would consider to be like a map, and like all maps has to be properly used. So maps have rules, and, we have to understand looking at those maps. So this is what we will be sort of discussing today. It is very much similar to the map that we have, when we're trying to go from point A to point B. Let's say from Bangalore to, let's say, Kana Shanti, which we keep either driving or go by train. So there's an initial preparation that you need to have, and there could be an internal journey, and finally you would probably have when you reach there. So there are different phases of the journey that we go through, even in a simple journey to go to Kanha, right? So the conditions change there, the states change there, and something, if we are aware of it, right, the journey becomes that more pleasant, right? So that is what this book Towards Infinity sort of talks about. So if you have any questions, please put it on the chat box. I'll try to address them also in parallel. Okay. So go to the next slide. This we are all part of, as we get into heartfulness, we are all part of a spiritual anatomy project. I think we are all work in progress, as you all know. And we have all started our journey, and we are at different locations, and our objective is where we are. This is our current state, and finally we have to arrive at that particular state. So that's basically where our spiritual anatomy project lies. So to basically go through this particular make this presentation, I have sort of tried to go through many of the books that Babuji and Daji have written, and I think most of the other books also, I think we have gone through in this SNP training sessions. I think all of you are aware of it, so we will also, I think all that knowledge, that all the information and knowledge that you have gathered during the last sessions, I think will be of very helpful. And this particular session, this particular book would be a sort of a culminating book for the program here, as such, which will sort of help us in our journey as such. Okay, so if you look at the structure of the book, as I said, it is a very simple book. As we said, has has a reasonably big foreword by Daji. I think quite an extensive foreword by him, and also there's a preface by Babuji. The foreword for the earlier editions were also written by K.C. Vardachari. I think many of you may know of K.C. Vardachari. He was one of the earliest stalwarts in the mission. Was a very close associate of Babuji. So the earlier book basically has also a very good foreword by K.C. Vardachari, which I think we will not go through this for the lack of time. I think I would suggest to go through the earlier books forward by Dr. K.C.V. The main book basically are just 3 chapters. This chapter is one on Jnana, which is basically knowledge, and the different knots, and the final state. Basically, these are the three sections of the book, with another 3 appendices. So this is a very simple book that is there. And what we, as Dr. Raghu also mentioned, we will also go through. We'll also have a lot of reference to the book on spiritual anatomy, which is very much like a guide to this particular book. So I think reading spiritual anatomy along with this particular book would be a very good exercise for the better understanding of this particular book, which has where Babuji uses a lot of words, which Daji has sort of explained in quite great detail, and it will be extremely helpful to go through these 2 books in sort of parallel to better understand Towards Infinity as such. So though Daji has given a lot of explanation on the different words, has explained many complicated words that Babuji has used, and we can make use of those explanations by Daji while reading this particular book on Towards Infinity. So you would see a lot of I'll sort of screen captured a lot of text from spiritual anatomy in this presentation also. So there'll be a lot of what I call text that has been pasted, using which we'll sort of try to understand this book on Towards Infinity. So this will be a presentation schedule. We'll probably have around 6 sessions of an hour each. Hopefully, the first session we'll sort of have an intro on this. We'll do on using spiritual book on spiritual anatomy. Then we'll have a sort of a recap of the first 4 books as to how they sort of connect with this current book that we are talking about today. We'll go through the foreword by Daji and also the preface by Babuji. Following that, we'll essentially talk about Jnana and the first chapter on Jnana by Babuji. We will look at the different stages of human consciousness according to Vedanta and also other traditions, sort of a reference. And we will be looking at some spiritual concepts and terminology, which will be used widely by Babuji in his book. So which will give us a good grip of what we are basically going to read when we sort of go through this book. So that will be the second session, and the following 3 sessions we will basically go through the chakras from 1 to 12. And on the 6th session, we'll be focusing on the central region and on the final stage. So this is essentially the content and the and how this particular sessions would sort of go through. So starting off with the recap of the lectures, essentially of the previous lectures, I'll try to go through them, see how they sort of get connected to this current particular book that we are sort of going to discuss. So starting off with with reality at dawn, I think as you probably know, we had this we just sort of listed down these different chapters in this particular book. In religion, Babuji starts off with religion. He basically takes us from the state of, since our society, most of us follow one religion or the other, he sort of brings us up from this particular stage where he talks about, Babuji talks about religion and the various systems, and he sort of mentions that the aim of all religion is basically to link between God and man. That has been the sort of objective of all religions, and with universal love being its fundamental base, of it. So it starts off. He has started from there. Then he talks about having what's the goal of life. I think I would not like to repeat that. Then he moves out, then he starts at the ways and means of basically sort of achieving that particular goal. Then he moves on to sort of talking about guru, and he talks about the spiritual training that is sort of needed. Where the training, where is essentially is to basically how to start listening to our inner voice. I think that's where the real, the practical part of the system really starts off. And it brings in the concept of inner cleaning. How do you deal with the thoughts during meditation, and also talks about briefly about what are this different stages that they were on the path of realization under the guidance of a master. So he also talks about faith, constant remembrance, that are all very necessary for spiritual growth. And finally, he talks about the real part of realization, where you need to sort of develop certain characteristics as we sort of which will help us in our growth. He uses the sadhana chatustaya and the Shat Sampati sort of a model which Shankara basically has sort of propagated, and then finally ends up with his first map on March to Freedom, which where he sort of initiates all of us into this, gives us this first particular map where we sort of, he brings into the concepts of the different stages of Maya, stages of ego, and the central region. This is his initial foray into the sort of a map that he develops in his develops in a big way in towards infinity. And he also expands a little bit of that, as you probably sort of came to know when we had in the previous sessions on Raj Yoga in the light of Sahaj Marg. So this is how we are initiated into this map that Babuji talks about in greater detail in Towards Infinity. And Sahaj Marg philosophy, he expands upon this whole philosophy of Sahaj Marg, where he talks about the Adi Tattva, the ultimate reality, which we all need to sort of come to know about, as you saw, and also maybe the friend that we talked about that has been mentioned in the whispers right today about the friend and the God that we talked about. We also briefly talked about cosmology and the role of Jiva and the Brahman. And he also brings in here a concept of knowledge. I think he introduced a concept of knowledge of Tarka, which is basically logic. Shruti is basically the and Anubhava. This is something, these are things that he slowly brings in certain amount of what you call science into this whole issue in the whole scheme of spirituality. So then again, he talks about humanity and the role of the human being in the entire cosmos. So slowly he's trying to get the practitioner or the seer or the abhyasi into understand its various stands and how is he already connected to the connected at both ends. He's connected at one end to the worldly to the world, and the other connection is through the root of the base or towards God itself. So that's the connection that he starts to bring in this particular book on Sahaj Marg philosophy. So moving forward to the next thing on the 10 maxims, I think this is one of the first books that Babuji wrote. Here this is really where he brings what the spirituality or Sahaj Marg into action, where he sort of explains to us how every activity in our life or we can make use of to expand our consciousness and also our spiritual well-being. So this is where he starts off. He sort of explains to the seeker what he needs to do with maxims 1 to 3, talking about the design and practice, and maxim 4 on what outlook that we need to have for things around us. 5 to 8 basically talks about natural challenges that we face, how do we treat others, how to take food. And 9, it basically talks about what should our outer response be, so that that we sort of help not only ourselves but help others too. And at bedtime it's almost like a feedback time. Like how do you sort of improve upon us, and it's something like continuous improvement that we need to do on a day-to-day basis in maxim 10. So this is how Babuji has sort of taken us in this particular book in our sadhana. And in this is basically the book on the efficacy of Raja Yoga. Here I think the technicalities of the particular subject of heartfulness or Sahaj Marg is sort of explained in a little more detail. Here we start off with he sort of brings into the concepts of, or classifies the entire 23 points into 3 major regions, or the heart region, the mind region, and the central region. This is the first time. He also sort of links the points, the spiritual points, into the human frame, and and he also briefly talks about certain conditions that we sort of feel in this particular book. Sort of an introductory book that you see a book for the book on Towards Infinity. So this is where we sort of, as a brief introduction of all the 4 books that we sort of went through in the last couple of months. And finally, we had the Heartfulness. I think I missed that out. I think this is our latest book. I think this is another sort of a thing which where Babuji has sort of expanded the practice that Babuji sort of Babuji and Chari sort of improvised, where he started introducing the heartful relaxation, which was one of the new additions to the practice, and also he brought into the spiritual anatomy the points C and D. We had only A and B, which Babuji had sort of talked about in Raja Yoga in the light of Sahaj Marg. In this, I think it was Raji's innovation of looking at C and D also. So that's where we sort of see how the knowledge of the heartfulness way has grown over the years. So this is basically sort of a recap of all the 5 books that we have gone through in the last couple of months. Okay, so I'll go to the forward now. Towards Infinity. So basically, you will see a lot of. I just sort of did a cut and paste of all the of the entire book from Daji, from Towards Infinity, the foreword for it. So we we will go through paragraph by it and see as to what is Daji trying to convey in his foreword as to how we could make best use of this particular book. So this book, I think, was this is one of the later books that basically came on. It was in 1958. To give a perspective, I think the first books that came was 10 Maxims. I think that came. That's a book that Babuji wrote in the early 1940s. I think maybe it's around the 1944 time frame. I think then we had the others book follow. Other books follow. So this book was one of the later books which came out in 1958. Okay. So the other important thing about this book also is this is the first time that these chakras were sort of revealed. If you look back at the literature of philosophy of later Indian philosophy also, the Kundalini was the other thing, only other sort of concept that was sort of explained earlier. But this was the very first time that Babuji was able to sort of put all these things in a physical frame for people to sort of experiment and sort of learn from. So this is the other point that the Daji Prasad brings out in this particular book. So as I said earlier, I think for millennia we have basically looked at only 7 chakras, and the information about even the 7 chakras, as you probably see, have been very sketchy, and it's not, and they're not been probably. I think they have not been very confidently sort of expressed, which was again a sort of a bit of a challenge, and there have been a lot of what you call spiritual systems which are sort of evolved, and each guru seemed to have their own expression of all these points also. So as I said, basically this is a map. That's what we are talking about, and we have to make use of the map. The main, I think, as going forward, what Daji is taking is that the map can be like what we use. We can use map in both ways. We can use it like a step-by-step process, or we can use it as a process as we keep going along. We can look at it and see if we are going in the right direction. Similar to the way we use Google Maps, some of us use it for at a very diligently without even looking at what is there to the left of the road or right of the road. Just keep looking at the map and going. But then some of us also use the Google Maps by as a sort of a check measure. And and this is what Babuji is also saying, that we can use this particular book both as a sort of a check to see if we are moving in the right direction, or like a very diligent abhyasi, we can sort of go through the map in detail. It depends on each and our individual personality. So moving forward, so this again here in this particular paragraph, the Babuji talks about knowledge and information. I think many of I think even in enough companies also, where people just think that you have information, you know how to do things. Coming in from an engineering world, or even from many doctors who are here, just doing an MBBS or a BTech degree would not make you a proficient. Lot of things that we learn on the job, and that's how we start to learn how to do things first. And we typically start from a learning phase and then go into a sort of a doing phase. So this book, and also what Daji mentions here is that a book can never contain knowledge. Knowledge has to be sort of gained, right? The knowledge has to be gained rather. So books can be helpful to get to have some information about it. So just by reading it or sort of telling it to others would not be useful. I think only when it is practiced and and we get experience out of it, only then we will have some control or some learning about that particular book. So again, the other thing that what Babuji also mentions is, I think, as a context, is to tell people what real knowledge is. I think he wanted to sort of tell the community then, rather the people then, that just by reading or listening to pravachans may not be just useful. I think that was the communication that that is what he wanted to communicate to the people around at that age. I think even now you see a lot of people basically participating in a lot of reading and listening to pravachans and lectures. But I think it was to them that he wanted to show that what really knowledge or jnana is, and that is the object of this particular book. And if you were to read his text next, right, you will see how angry he was with the people who used to sort of do a lot of lecturing in those days without really practicing them in real life. So again, I said, as we are sort of discussing, the real knowledge, true knowledge is experienced. Right? I think that's why in jobs, right, or any person, we need people with experience, right? So most of us in jobs, we start as interns, and then we slowly learn through the people who are professionals to learn about the trade and then learn about what we need to do. So similarly, here also, again, as we gain experience on a particular job, like we gain experience on a particular job, like an engineer gains experience in sort of learning to develop a product, or a doctor learns how to sort of conduct an operation through doing their internships and working with a senior doctor and sort of learning the trade. Like similarly, here also, the abhyasi basically through his practice, and he keeps gaining knowledge by doing things, by doing meditation and by following a practice that the masters are sort of laid out, especially like what is laid out in the 10 maxims. That's how true knowledge can sort of, that an abhyasi can get. And as the abhyasi progresses, the true knowledge also would reflect his true state too, in his being and his approach and in his dealing with things. So this is another interesting thing that he says when he moved to the next level. Like here is talking about chakras. I think we are also familiar with chakras also, I'm sure. So as we move here, it is essentially as we move from a chakra, that is when our understanding sort of develops. So this is a little bit of what you call, we all think that we have to have information first and then basically we gain knowledge. But here he says, as the abhyasi process proceeds from one chakra to another chakra, the chakra basically helps him, or the abhyasi, to sort of understand things better. I think this is something which is, I think, very, when you read this for the first time, it's sort of, sort of a little bit of an invert into where we are told first we have to get information and then do things. Well, that's how we learn in real life. But here, it seems to be a little bit more different, because you move to a different chakra and then you understand about the spiritual aspect of it in a better way. So the next paragraph again, as we keep going, it says, as you have probably roughly know that we go through around 23 circles or 13 chakras, and as we keep progressing, from one chakra to the other, or one circle to another, we basically go through the same thing, but our understanding somehow seems to grow. And in each chakra there's a process, and each the same things start to look something very different, and that basically shows us our condition or the state that we are in. Okay. So again, This is again a very interesting concept that Rajiv sort of brings forth and sort of expands it in his preface. Is that that we have to sort of lose that particular sort of negate that knowledge that has been gained at that particular point of time to go to a much higher level. Like for instance, we go from, to give an example, he says when you go from chakra 1 to chakra 2, the important thing is that we sort of gain a lot of knowledge, or sort of, let's say in point 1, number 1 is we are sort of trying to sort of understand the dualities of contentment and discontentment, let's say, right? So once we understand how to do that, we somehow seem to sort of, if we want to progress to the next chakra, we probably will also have to sort of forget many of these things in some mysterious way, so that we can progress to the next level. Else, what he says is there could be sort of curvature in our sadhana. Curvature means that if we start to get sort of, let us say, too contained in that particular first chakra, let's say we start liking this chakra, like contentment, for instance. We like it too much. Let's say this condition that is bestowed upon the abhyasi is of a very great level. Or say the second chakra of peace, let us say. If the abhyasi moves to that level and he starts enjoying that particular chakra, it would be a sort of a curvature for him. He would not be able to move to the next. So somehow, in some way, we have to learn how to negate it and then move on to the next chakra. So this is one thing which we will all have to bear in mind, when we start off working on ourselves, or when we start helping other abhyasis, as we become preceptors, right? As we start helping others, because it's not only the samskaras we sort of are challenges, but all these wonderful experience that we get could also be challenges in our sadhana, which can cause curvatures. I think this is something which Babuji and Daji sort of brings out very beautifully for our learning. Yeah. Again, I think this is a sort of concept that he sort of expands it in this particular paragraph, where he says, knowledge is a result of experience, but our experience all fade away into a state of negation. In that case, what kind of knowledge are we actually going to gauge? And here he gives an example of, in the next paragraph, on how you basically learn to drive a vehicle, let us say. For instance, when you start driving a vehicle, we start, let's say a car, for instance, our attention is on the steering wheel, on the gear. Now there is gearless vehicles, but on the gear and clutch and all the stuff. But as we start of learning, whether you almost forget as to what needs to be done. We just get into the road, get into the vehicle, and keep moving. So, and if somebody asks you, how is your hand moving? And we really not able to explain, right? So knowledge too has to move to that sort of a level where a human being is capable of, essentially. That's what he's essentially saying, that even gaining of knowledge, processing of this knowledge should be such that it becomes almost sort of instantaneous. And that is very much possible for a human being in a spiritual sadhana, is what Babuji is sort of promising, and what Daji is sort of explaining out here. Yeah. Yeah, I think here again he is expanding on this particular concept again, either in any field, right? We can neither be satisfied at our existing level. Again, we talked about briefly earlier on curvatures, right? Where we say, if we basically think we are expert at a particular level, then I think our knowledge stops, right? I think we are that's what we see in our companies also, right? When somebody stops to learn, right? I think his progress in the company or how his progress in understanding a subject, for that matter, also stops. So similarly, somehow we have to sort of, even in a spiritual endeavor, we have to start keeping that, there's nothing as satisfaction at here. It's something like some sort of invertendo, where we need to be dissatisfied all the time, so that we can keep learning. So satisfaction itself is maybe we have to be satisfied in the external world. We have to learn to study. But in the spiritual world, our dissatisfaction needs to be there. Our restlessness also needs to be there, and which is very much needed in a spiritual world. So there is nothing like a holiday as such in spirituality, where where we need to do continuously work, and and that is where we start looking at being and this is again as I said, right, it is a little bit of a thing that we have to sort of understand and sort of proceed. And if you see look at the last sentence, you'll also see at a certain point of time that knowledge may not be enough for you. Knowledge itself could become a barrier, right? You could have probably seen, right, in when we work with many of the professors who are sort of stagnated, you would see they probably would be teaching the same subject again and again and again, probably not in touch with the progress that that particular field has made. So for that, you will have to have a sort of an innocence of wanting to learn more and more, trying to go into uncharted territories and in that particular field and try to experiment. We may fail in it in the real world, but again, that sort of a state, that sort of a hunger needs to be there in the abhyasi, so that he is able to look at things what are going to come forward, and at the stage where one has to go into stage of what he says knowledgelessness also is to be sort of be there for him to really progress. And as you see in the last sentence, and that's the actual condition of real knowledge, and that is at the final stage. So and to add to the mystery, or and as Daji says in Babuji's style, we also have to go beyond knowledgelessness. I think we will talk about that in greater detail as we go through the different chakras. And this is where we have to keep ourselves open, and and keep our energies also up, and have our and have our energies up, and also be restless to understand, and not just understand but also feel through our sadhana, which is more important. Try to look for the anubhava that we get, and and that's the only way we can sort of progress quickly in spirituality and try to understand the different states that we are in. And finally, I think this book is, I think it sort of concludes, saying that a sincere seeker should be a sort of, look at these books, feel those consciousness, get those, be very sensitive and be aware of what is happening with him, at the mind level, at the physical level, and sort of understand the nuances that are happening at each chakra, so that he'll be able to decipher for himself as to what's going on within him. And also, as we become preceptors, we are also able to help others along the way. I think this is his concluding, paragraph in his forward. So I think what he encourages is be restless, not to be. And there's another invertendo here. I think this, as our masters, right, when we think that we have understood something, they would also sort of stop us there. As you would see in the first sentence, that I encourage one of you to work and prepare yourself for these stages. The next sentence says, be restless, not to be moved to the next chakra. He says us to be restless, but also not to be moved to the next chakra. So I've been thinking, of what similar things that happens in our life, right? Like, like in the game of cricket, right, when you watch. So, like in a T20 match, you also have to play, not lose a wicket, but also score runs. So it is something like, you can't, so it is something like that. Even a test match, you'll have more time, but you'll have to score runs nevertheless. But in T20, it's a little bit of a different game. So I hope I'll be giving a lot of cricketing examples and engineering examples. So please bear with me if we're getting too bored about cricketing examples and engineering examples. Please let me know. I'll try to reduce it to that extent as possible. So that's basically how I sort of look at it, so that we have to play with a lot of attention, care, but but also score runs also. So that's the sort of mindset we need to sort of develop, where we are we are restless but not eager to sort of too eager to sort of move to the next chakra. Because if you are too eager, the challenge is that we start off imagining, and that could be a challenge for understanding the different stage of our spiritual development in a proper way. So this basically concludes the forward of Daji in Towards Infinity. I'll move to the. Okay, I think this is the last paragraph. It talks about how this book could become a foundation of yoga for our modern times, because I think this is one of the first books that have been written, with so much of detail on the spiritual points in the human structure. I think this will be there'll be many books coming in the future, but this will be one of the first books, that which we will sort of which every other system will be looking forward to in the near future. So I'll move to the next phase on the what Daji has written, what Babuji has written. So I think we should probably read this particular preface in the light of what was happening in the 1940s. Brother? I think what condition was.
Brother?
Yes, brother. Good, brother.
Can we just have a pause for a few seconds? There is one hand raised. Sure. And after that, we can go through the preface.
Okay. Oh, there. Okay. Yes, brother. Go ahead, brother. Yeah.
So, sorry, I was trying to find out this forward by Daji. It's not in the latest edition. Is that, or am I missing?
Yeah, it's in the latest edition, brother. Yeah.
It is it?
Yeah, it is. I just took the latest edition, and that's where it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I ordered one at the beginning of this program that doesn't have it.
Let me see if I can immediately show that to you. I think it's in the other room.
Oh, okay. I picked this up. Which edition this is? It's okay. I can read it from the slides, so I think it's okay.
I'll show you the book. Maybe I think at the end of the I'll sort of paste that book. Okay, the book looks like this. If you look at the Towards Infinite, what you see in this slide, that's how it looks like. This is the latest edition. This is the book. This is a book of 5. I think this is where it is.
Okay.
I think this.
Brother, I'm having the oldest book, the complete work of Ramchandra. In that, all the parts are there. So is it okay or it is different? We have to go for this blue one.
Yeah, I would encourage people to use this book because this becomes very relevant. I think I think we can read the preface several times, because I think Daji gives us a lot of hints in this book as to how we need to read this. I would suggest to basically have a copy of this book, or at least have the text of this. Maybe I can forward. I think I captured the entire forward in text form, so you can read that also. So
okay. I have the volume in the complete works of Ramchandra. I don't see it. Maybe in the separate book, it may be there.
Yeah, complete was Ramchandra. I think that book, the preface is written by Dr. KCV. Yeah, Dr. KC Vardachari has written the forward for that, and I think that was written for those times. And this, I think, forward, I think, will be very useful for today's times.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, your slides have the text, so I'll use that.
Right, you have the text completely. Yeah, I think I've captured the entire text of the book.
Okay.
Namaste, brother. In one of your earlier slide, it mentions that each time a seeker passes through a chakra, it becomes the duty of the guide to nullify the associated powers in order to protect and ensure the onward journey. Can you elaborate on this, how it has been done by the preceptors as of now?
Okay, I think we talked. I think we talked about that every chakra, right? Basically has its own what do you call plus points. Like as we are talking, right? Maybe the first point is about contentment, right? the first chakra. The second point is about peace. Now, if it is taken too far, for instance, if the person, if the abhyasi starts to sort of enjoy those points to a greater extent, that itself can become a sort of a curvature for the abhyasi. So the master would probably not like to have that, because he would like to help the abhyas to move forward rather getting stuck in those, those minor achievements. I think masters want us to achieve go to a higher level. I think he would take us through those stages without having some amount of good grip on those points, is what my understanding is. So, Raghu brother, you want to add something?
See, there are two aspects to it. One aspect is getting enamored by the condition that you actually enjoy at a particular point. The second aspect is many of these chakras have hidden miracles, powers, or hidden siddhis. Now, your question is as of now irrelevant in the sense that you're asking how do perceptors do it? This is not a forum to be elaborated upon that before you actually become perceptor. That question will be relevant after you people become preceptors, after passing through the exam, getting the training done. At that time, it might become relevant. So the question is slightly irrelevant, but in taking the spirit of the question into account, two things. The guide will make sure that you are not becoming aware of the siddhis which are inherently present at any particular point. As and when every point comes to the highest state of blossom, the Sayurjata, it is quite possible that people might become aware of the hidden siddhis in that particular point and then go behind the siddhis. We will talk about that particular aspect in 2 or 3 different contexts. When do we actually develop siddhis? But two things. One, you should not get entrapped by enjoying the condition of a particular point too much. So if you start liking the condition at a particular point too much, you are likely to kind of miss why you are actually needing to go beyond that particular point. In other words, you lose track. This is what happens with the second point. This is what happens with the Sahasradal Kamal, various other points in our journey. Same thing occurs at the 7th point for various reasons, different reasons. But the second aspect is that every point is associated with some amount of siddhis, which are like magical powers. And in our system, the master works in such a way that the abhyasis do not become aware of this particular siddhis or miraculous powers. So that our alignment to the spiritual journey does not go astray. These are the two things that master does. How it is done, all those things will become relevant in due course of time, probably not now. Okay, we'll just leave it there. Kishore?
Yeah, brother, one follow-up question just on to that. So, as you were mentioning on the second point, right? So, uh, generally, at least for me, I also like when we are peaceful, when I'm peaceful, right? So, that is a natural condition. So, uh, I was wondering, am I getting attached to it, or how would I like? Sometimes different experiences are also there, but in general, peace and contentment kind of feeling is generally which we naturally get attracted to.
Best thing to do is what Babuji says is keep the goal in front of you all the time. Not the goal of peace, but the goal in front of you all the time. And you need to have that restlessness to go towards the goal. Whether you feel peaceful, you don't feel peaceful, that is not the issue. You need to have the goal in front of you. Now, you tell me, when you are studying so many hours, 10 hours, 12 hours for the exam, do you think that you feel peaceful? No, no. When you are striving hard, obviously you will not feel peaceful. You will feel out of your comfort zone. But it's out of that comfort zone, that you actually get the best results. When there are no exams, you might probably read about half an hour, 1 hour, and you are very peaceful. But that peace is not going to give you any good thing in your life.
Got it.
Right? That's why Babaji says it's better to be restless and painful towards achieving the goal rather than being peaceful. So that's why in Voice Real, the first chapter is My Pain. And he wants all the Abhyasis to develop that pain. He does not want us to develop peace. He wants us to develop that pain. Okay.
Yeah, just to add to Raghu's points, what I would like to say, it's something like, from a software standpoint, you can call it like a library. So whenever you need peace, you probably take it. You just call it. If you learn that skill of peace or contentment, let us say, whenever you need it, you basically get it. And if you are skillful, you will probably take it, isn't it? You just call a library, within yourself. Like a software architecture, right? You can probably have it something like that. You'll be able to call it at will. And that's what Abhyas probably helps us to do, I guess.
2 minutes centering leads us there. Yeah.
Brother, can I sort of move?
Yeah, we will continue with the next part. I thought because there was a lot of text to assimilate. So I thought one break in between would actually help everyone. So that's all. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So let's look at the towards the preface by Babuji. So as I said, right, I think so as I said, he was he was basically writing it, writing it to that particular audience, where there are a lot of people giving a lot of religious people giving a lot of gyan to people. There are a lot of lectures happening, a lot of gurus that were there, and he was in that sort of a period, and he was probably trying to sort of, as Babuji Daji has also mentioned his preface, he was trying to address that audience, so that those people who are sort of interested in spirituality, not only learning spirituality but also imparting spirituality, get to know the real state of things. And that is why he says he has written this particular book. So I think in that particular context is what he's trying to mention in this particular booklet also. So he, as I said, right, he uses very strong language here in his preface, where he says, where we have quack commentators of sort of having a wrong understanding, misinterpreting it, and also conveying the same to people around them, right? Sort of a gullible public. And that is what he was trying to address them, and in this and try to correct that particular scenario in this particular book. So essentially, you'll see his probably his preface, is sort of is in that particular direction. So he says, as he said in the next paragraph, he says some people, who has made many of the religious practices as their profession, really forgetting, losing the spirit behind what is to be said and done, and just going by the spirit, by the letter only. What is being said, what is said in the books, right? Just going by that, which many of the people who are, whom they were sort of imparting this information to, sort of only looked at only at the words that were written in the book rather than the spirit behind it. So that's basically where he's sort of moving towards to. Then again, this is a follow-up of what happened to those people who are sort of imparting this particular information to the people, is that they really did not have personal experience. I think here he stresses on the importance of personal experience here. Like people who give lectures on Gita or the Upanishads, right? Without having personal experience, it is people would not really be able to understand or not be able to tell the right things. So that is essentially what Daji is sort of mentioning here, is people were talking about things without really experiencing. Like, it's something in companies that people who don't know software or have not developed a product talking about product development. So, it is something like that. Like, people who don't know how to do things but talking about it, which will be of no use to anybody for that matter. So I think that's what what Babuji is sort of talking about here. And and again, going forward, it is a very similar thing about pseudo-religious leaders, who are quite verbose in their language, but but in content, sort of lacking in content, and that's what he talks about it here. And again, he says the objective essentially here is not about imparting real wisdom, but essentially talking about their, about showing off their knowledge and stuff like that, but not really imparting appropriate knowledge is what he's sort of saying us. Yeah. I think it's very similar thing. I think that seems to be going on in this the following paragraphs also. So again, and the last he says is, this is basically a thing that he tells all the sort of religious practitioners, where he says, a person can rightly take to be a knower of divine knowledge in the true sense when he has mastered the various conditions depicted in this booklet. So that is basically his sort of guidance that he has provided. So he who transcends them is capable of being a guru or a teacher, and he who transcends beyond where one might rarely be able to reach deserves to be called a Sadguru. So I think he is sort of defining who a guru is, or rather what his dictionary meaning of what a guru and a Sadguru should be, before he sort of moves forward to teach or a particular subject, or especially on a divine subject as such. So this is basically the preface towards infinity by Babuji. So what I did was I used ChatGPT for this will be my last slide, to talk about, to see what really knowledge is all about. See what is contemporary knowledge, how we have different knowledge and stuff like that. And I would sort of put it together as a learning model. So this is, there could be some errors in it. So it is for your own consideration and sort of seeing whether it's appropriate or not. So if you look at the conventional learning, as we see, sources we take books from we take from external books and teachers. That's how we sort of do our conventional learning. Well, Babuji's learning is, in addition to the divine, you all learn from the divine within. And the greatest thing that we learn is the sources from master's transmission. And the master's transmission is the one which helps us to sort of understand more and more. And the more we study, the more we absorb, the more we acquire and absorb, and make it one, right? We start to get, and that's the basic source of our learning. Something which, being in heartfulness, which we sort of privy to. The method is, again, the conventional learning involves a lot of study, analysis, memory. Maybe we do a lot of in engineering, we do a lot of testing too. Somehow in the ChatGPT was not able to take that. But in our method, we basically have a lot of meditation, a lot of anubhava experience and transmission. That's the method that we follow. The intellect is, when conventional learning is basically intellect, and also you can add maybe gut feeling. Most of engineering does happen through gut feeling also. So you could add that. But in Babuji's learning methodology, you would probably see the instruments would be the heart. Heart plays a very major role in how we use the heart. That is helps us. In conventional learning, the goal essentially is accumulation of knowledge, more and more knowledge about products, systems, disciplines. Here the thing is transmission of the being, because we are a product and we become a better product at the end of the day as better human beings. So the end point is knowing more and more. And I think here what ChatGPT has picked up is saying that you sort of become infinite. And that's basically what is the end point of a learning from a Babuji's learning model is talking about. So that's a thing that to put it as a process, this is what is telling me what Babuji learning model is talking about, where we start off with external learning through reading, observation. We use our intellect, we use our senses, and what the final goal is essentially leads to better mental understanding. This is what happens in our jobs, in our work. So where we start increasingly having better understanding of whatever work that we're doing, whether it's as a manager or basically as an individual contributor developing a product. So the next phase is through internal learning. Here we basically use meditation and introspection. We use the heart and the mind for it. And here we basically start to get more and more, the study is more about the self. So you start getting more about self-awareness. The self-awareness starts to improve. Then as we start gaining experience in our sadhana, we have this sort of experiential learning, which is sort of enabled by transmission and sort of bestowed through blessings of the master, different spiritual states. And that's when we start sort of seeing the transformation. The shift starts to happen within us, where the transformation of consciousness does happen. And post that, then we start to identify. ChatGPT calls it identity learning. Very interesting word that is coined up. This happens through merging, right? The AEIOU concept, I think that Daji has sort of initiated, and also he's talking about beyond merging. So that's basically where we call it identity learning, where we sort of with meditation and transmission, we start off different conditions, we sort of become one with it, and we start off getting those divine conditions basically. And the last phase is supra learning, where no difference between learning and learning, and that's when we become a state of silence and infinity. And these are the different most of us are very familiar with external learning, and as we come into Sahajma, basically, or into meditation practice, we get into internal learning and experiential learning. And and many of us maybe you start off have to get into more of identity learning, and supra learning would be the next phases. An interesting chart that that ChatGPT put together, we thought of shared with all of you. So I think this is my last slide, and this will be the of today. Be open to questions. So next sessions we'll start getting into the technical intricacies of we'll get into jnana and the other topics in the coming sessions. Brother Murthy, go ahead.
Namaste, brother. See, the last chart what he put up was quite interesting. Basically, the ChatGPT one. So, what I have seen in my experience is, unless until you mentor any chatbot, whether it's ChatGPT or OpenAI or anything, Bard or whatever, it gives you different kind of answers, and also the prompt has to be refined based on your own experience. But it can give you right understanding sometimes, but it will deviate in its own way based on the algorithm and also your own interaction, how you mentor it. So let's have that in mind, and it helps to quickly analyze, get a lot of information. But every chatbot is specialized in certain things, and when you look at variety of them, then you'll know the difference, why it is behaving so and so. So it does give you an indication. That's what I feel.
Yeah, that's fine. So what I did was I see the certain amount of changes that I've made. I think that is also quite possible. I think I just put together as sort of a learn using ChatGPT as a learning tool, as another tool which you could probably use. Not that they're exactly, the validation has to come from our own individual perspectives and our own learning. And it's just a tool. I just sort of put it over here. So I think I made one attempt here to do that. I thought it was interesting. I sort of shared that with you. Yeah. Brother,
take off the slide share.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think I lost. Brother, I will take a stop share.
Better now. Go ahead, Anand.
Okay. See, this is a question about this experience versus imagination. Because like when we started this program, I think I knew very little, right, about many things. Sometimes I'm reading and I'm trying to interpret what I experienced, right? And I'm not sure if I'm just imagining or was it truly an experience, right? As knowledge increases, I mean, or as information increases, let me not use the word knowledge. So how do you sort of battle that?
Whether you want to take it?
Okay, I can give it a try. Like, I can come back by experience, basically what we do at work, for instance, right? So we have information and we have knowledge. When we develop a product for a larger, I work in an aerospace industry. And I work in an aerospace industry. I work on the air management systems. So initially I had some information around it. I knew many, as we see a lot more, as we gain experience, right? Like field experience on the product and having designed and having the test failed at the product failing at different levels, you keep gaining experience. And then you get a feeling that, then you're able to sort of develop product which lasts for for maybe 100 hours of operation or like 1,000 hours of operation. So you start gaining that experience. Similarly, I think in our sadhana too, right, we start figuring it out within ourselves on the different sort of what do you call traits that you need. Like, so for instance, like you're discontent, for that matter, let's say. So somehow you're not peaceful, let us say, when somebody is disturbing you, for instance. Like especially in the heart region, Daji talks about the 5 C's and the 5 D's, right? Contentment and discontentment, calmness and otherwise, right? So that way you sort of, by sort of getting more and more awareness and trying to dig deep within ourselves and trying to sort of, like, as I said, like libraries, right? We're able to recall within us, and start utilizing them, right? I think then that is when, that anubhava will help us to sort of help you to recall and also sort of apply it in those appropriate circumstances, and then and make use of it. So again, all these gifts that are given to us, they are basically, as Raji says, these are all gifts that are given to us by our masters, or the different chakras. All these are gifts that are given to us by our masters, and we use them appropriately. And when we know that we have used them, we somehow know that we have understood, have got some grip on that sort of a condition that we have to, or what our response need to be at that particular point of time. And I just thought what it came to me.
Maybe I can be a little bit more specific, my question. Once I thought I saw some gray patches, right? During a sitting, for example, right? And my mother she's a very experienced PRC, 27 years. So I went and asked her, gray patches, what does it mean, right? And she didn't give me an answer. She said nothing. Then once I thought, that was before I started this program. And then once I thought I saw some yellow light, right? Then I asked her, and then she said it may be the first chakra, right? Something you've experienced. And then I was reading spiritual anatomy, and I saw this in first chakra, it talks about the color is yellow, right? So, this is like, in one case, I thought there was some connection between what I read versus what I saw. Another case, it was just a bit weird, right? But I just wrote both things in my diary, right? I just don't know, was I imagining or was it just that I guess maybe I'm being very specific with that question. Yeah.
Yeah, like in engineering, what we do, brother, we have something called the validation piece, right? We have the cause and the effect, right? So we have the validation piece. Now, you probably could look at it, see as to what your mental condition is like. You saw yellow, and then maybe was it's about the first point, and then is it something about contentment or something? Maybe you probably are probably would be the best judge, right? Something was probably disturbing you, or and if you are able to access this point or the meditate on this point and try to get a remedy for yourself, and if it works, right, it's again what best what Daji's use some of the techniques that Daji has provided, use those techniques, and if it works, that's a validation of of the point, of the validation of many things. It is the validation of the tool that you have used, the validation of the point that is happening, the validate, and if it's repeatable, right, repeatable and reproducible with your own self, and with as you go forward, maybe as you become prepared, so you see things happening repeatable with others, and that's how you sort of get experience on what it is, and that's how I would sort of respond to your question.
So just
Okay.
I just add few things.
Yeah, sure.
One of the first things that we have to learn in meditation is not to imagine anything during meditation. That's the first thing. We say 3 things not to be done. No going behind the thoughts, no imagination, no force. Now, if we get into the habit of doing meditation correctly, then this question will not arise. Because what would happen is you will become sensitive whenever you imagine during meditation. See, for imagination to be experienced during meditation, we have to do something. We have to actively imagine. So there is an active process involved. But meditation is just a passive process where you just sit and observe what happens. That's all, what unfolds. Now, there are a lot of experiences that we pass through, and color is one of the commonest experiences that is kind of reported by many abhyasis. Now, the colors might actually give you a clue where the work occurred in that particular session. Beyond that, colors is not very indicative of your journey. So it is indicative of where the work occurred during that particular sitting. That's all it is. So I was just, anyway, while the session was going on, I was just reading some of the letters from Babuji's, Lalaji's Complete Works Volume 3. So I'll just read one paragraph since it's kind of relevant to this particular question that you asked. God is absolute love, absolute knowledge, and absolute bliss. But if in knowledge and bliss there is an open expression of love, this special blessing is among the many blessings of His. Love is the very soul of feeling. Love is the very soul of feeling. We exist through feelings, and through feelings only, one day we will merge in the original source. Now he is giving a clue regarding what is it that we actually have to pick up during the session of meditation. Most critical thing that needs to be picked up in a session of meditation is the feeling. Suppose you see a color. Now you need to learn to pick up any feelings associated with the color. That's very, very important. Now, what we say to Abhyasis who come here is, when you see any color, first check that are you imagining? Have you kept your faculty of imagination quiet during the time that you are experiencing? That you can check immediately as you pass through the experience. How do you know? If it is an imagination, the moment you actually try to alter it, what you experience changes because it's because of your own imagination. But if it is an experience that you're passing through because of the effect of the meditation work that is happening, That is not going to change just because you are going to change. Imagination is under your control. Experience of meditation is not under your control. Can you see the point? Imagination is under your control. However, experience of meditation is not under your control. So, if it is imagination, first you have to check whether are you imagining. And if it's imaginary, if you still have any doubt, what you can do is you can try to alter and see whether you can actually change your experience. If it is changeable, then it's more likely related to the imagination. If it's not changeable, it is rightly related to the experience of the meditation that you are passing through. Okay. The third aspect is imagination, since it is an active process, adds samskaras to you. Now, the experiences that you actually pass through because of the work of the meditation is actually removing certain things from your system. Okay, it is unfolding things within. That is what we talk about. The colors, the conditions, the feelings, everything that you get is an unfolding of something within you. You are not actually adding, you are actually unfolding certain things and then deleting certain things. That these are the few clues that you can have in terms of what does the experience mean. Now, there are two approaches to this question that you have asked. One approach is not to scratch your head about anything. Whatever is the experience of the meditation, write it in the book and forget about it. This is one approach. Now, obviously, human mind being human mind, it always wants to try and grasp what is the significance of any experience. Like, for example, if I were to just give a very similar analogy, you go to your doctor and the doctor says, go and get these lab tests.
Get
And then if
these?
you want to lab tests, some tests.
Oh, lab tests, okay.
And the doctor says, do the testing and forget about it. How do you feel about it? You will just feel how illogical. Okay. Now, this is one approach. Now, why is that this approach is valid in spirituality and not in material life? It is valid in spirituality because at the end of the day, we are moving towards an experience-less state in spirituality. That's what we are moving towards. After passing through all the experiences, we are gradually moving towards the central region where there is hardly any experience. In other words, as you go higher and higher in spirituality, it is more and more of less and less experience. More and more of less and less experience. That being the case, why scratch the head about any experience at all? Don't worry about it. Okay? If you take that view, now many people follow that. They are on writing the diary and then they hardly look at the diary. It's of no use. The second approach is it's a bit more pragmatic, more practical. Now, it is quite natural for anybody to be inquisitive about what is the kind of experience that they've had and what does it mean. The only caveat in this second approach is that you should not try to interpret too much and get attached to that interpretation. Remember, like in life, it's a moving thing. For example, somebody comes to me and I check their BP. And in that session, the BP is high in that reading. Now, I'm not going to draw any conclusion immediately. I tell them on this particular occasion, the BP is on the slightly higher side. We would like you to see back again in about a week or 2 weeks time. We will check it again. So maybe 2-3 times if I get the same result, I might actually start wondering about whether there is something that we need to do something about it. Right? Likewise, here also, there is something called as CMC SLV. We have already elaborated this. in every chakra that work occurs, there is 6 parameters that you can actually experience as an abhyasi. Okay, CMC SLV. C means colors. M means you can have movement. And the next C is condition. So that is CMC. So colors, movement, conditions. Then SLV. SLV means sound, L means light, V means vibrations. So whenever work occurs on any particular chakra, in any sitting for that matter, whether it is an individual sitting or in a satsang, you will experience some combinations of the CMC SLV, and as far as this is concerned, the work on the samskaras is concerned, we call it as sprite. We had spoken about it in the past. So when the work is occurring on the consciousness or the chakra, it is CMC SLV. When the work is occurring on the samskaras, it is sprite. Does anyone remember about the sprite? We had spoken about it many sessions back. If you don't remember, please look back to your notes and come back. That will be one good way of revising what you have learned from the past. Okay, specifically we had spoken about these two. Now this is a more pragmatic approach, where what is it that you can experience in any session of meditation? You will experience some work related to the samskaras, some work relating to the consciousness. That's all that you can experience. What else can you experience? That being the case, over a period of time, you will actually work out what each of these experiences that you pass through in meditation mean. Now that is a slightly better way of learning. For example, if the same lab tests are done and the report is brought back to the doctor looks at the report, correlates the report with your physical condition, and then comes to some kind of conclusion and then suggests how to actually handle it. Do you need to worry about it at all, or you don't need to worry about it and you can just leave it aside? Exactly the same thing. You can just look at the CMC SLV and the sprite experience that you have during the session of meditation, correlate that with the spiritual anatomy book that you have got. The other books that you can also correlate it is with the perceptor's own experience that they have gained over a period of their own abhyas and the sittings that they have given with the abhyasis. So they will have their own learning. Like every doctor has their own experiential learning while seeing patients over a period of time. Every perceptor will also have their own experiential learning while actually dealing with many abhyasis over a number of years. So that's another aspect that you can actually tap into. Okay, but only caveat, as I say, only precaution is that many times abhyasis tend to over-interpret and then get attached to the interpretation. As long as you don't do these two things, trying to gain an understanding or be pragmatic regarding the experiences that you have in meditation is quite logical. Okay. The most critical of all the CMC SLV is the feeling. And the feeling is related to the condition, the second C. It's the condition. That's the feeling. And feeling can initially be felt by us during the sitting of meditation. Then, if the feeling becomes more deeper, we can feel the feeling outside the session of meditation also. If it becomes even more deeper and more impactful at a certain depth, the feeling is now also having an influence on the people around us. So the feeling can be experienced at 3 different levels. Only during the session of meditation, during the session of meditation, and with its impact persisting during the course of the next few hours to 1 or 2 days. And thirdly, not only you experiencing the feeling, but the impact of the feeling being felt on the people around you. Now, when the impact of the feeling has started to be felt by people around you, now that is a very good indication that the work at that particular chakra has reached a certain depth. That's a very, very important clue. Okay. Now, when you read Towards Infinity or Spiritual Anatomy, What you need to become thorough is what are the conditions or the feelings that you get at different points. That's the whole point of doing this presentation. And that feeling is the map. At every point, there are specific feelings that you get. And if you know the map of these feelings relating to each of the point, you will be able to work out how you are actually progressing in terms of your spiritual journey. That is the most telltale sign. Not colors, not vibrations, not force, not movement, nothing of that kind. Most critical telltale sign of progress is feelings. Okay, so I'll stop here. I hope we have covered quite a few bit, but both the paths are valid as far as spirituality is concerned. However, the journey will be more enjoyable, more wonderful, filled with curiosity and wonder when you follow the second path. When you follow the first path, after some period of time, you start feeling that the entire spiritual journey is just mundane. Nothing is happening, nothing is happening. There is no excitement left. Okay, so both are equally valid. In fact, for the second only, the books are written, the Towards Infinity and the Spiritual Anatomy is written for the second path, people who follow the second path. Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
The
Since you
second,
are reading this, I want you to read the chapter on the knowledge in Truth Eternal. There's a chapter on knowledge in Truth Eternal, Lalaji's book. Please read that. It's very, very important.
and the second path was whether where we like we are writing and we are correlating to that things, right?
Correct. In fact, we were just reading one sentence today in the same context. It is there in Kannada. You know the divine currents which flow from the ksho, from the primary still. The divine current starts flowing from there. And Babaji correlates in the sixth maxim those people where the divine current is flowing, when they actually align with the divine currents, they become very sensitive to feelings. He is now bringing two things. How do you know that you are actually becoming more spiritual? How do you know that? There are many ways in which it's been described. We say that you develop lightness, you develop moderation, you develop calmness, you develop balance, you develop subtlety. Now, these are all 5 common signs that is there in every chakra. As you progress from one chakra to next chakra, these 5 gets refined. But they are not specific to any chakra. It is there in all the 5 chakras. In all the chakras, you can feel these 5. For example, one simple example if I were to give you, suppose the work is occurring on the first point. So you will develop some degree of subtlety in the first point. You will develop some degree of lightness. You will develop some degree of moderation as far as desires are concerned. You will develop some degree of balance in terms of desires versus contentment. So these things will automatically happen at every point. Now look at it how the journey is very dynamic. Now suppose we move to the second point. Now the second point will be in alignment with the first point. So you still feel lightness there, you still feel subtlety there. However, the balance now gets rebalanced. The balance is based on the work that is occurring in the first point and the second point taken together. It's like when you learn the first lesson in a particular class, that's the only thing that you know. But when you learn the second lesson in that particular class, you are now rebalancing in terms of how much learning from the first chapter you are going to keep in the mind and how much learning from the second chapter. When you are in the third lesson, you will actually do the same thing, rebalancing. As and when you learn more chapters, you will go on rebalancing. and relating one chapter to the next chapter. That's how the learning occurs. Exactly the same thing occurs as far as rebalancing of the moderation and balance is concerned. It's always a continuously evolving dynamic journey. Okay, so just remember, now when apart from these 4 or 5, you are now talking about what exactly is happening in terms of the spiritual journey. And one thing he's saying is that as you become more aligned to the divine currents coming from the Kshobh, you develop more sensitivity to feelings. In other words, for the new Abhyasi, they don't know what is happening on the first day, in the first, say, first 1 or 2 months. But as and when they actually progress over the next few months, if they are able to give out more kind of experiences that they're passing through the course of the meditation and before and after the session of meditation, and also the changes that they see outside in their life because of the effect of the meditation, that means their alignment towards the divine current is now increasing. That is a very good sign that they're actually progressing spiritually. Sensitivity to feelings with awareness goes on increasing. Now, there again, we were just sharing this. We have read that maxim n number of times in the past. Today, while reading it for the Kannada session, first time we actually picked up that line where he clearly correlates between the sensitivity to feelings with awareness to the divine currents. In other words, if you are developing sensitivity, your alignment to the divine current is increasing. If the alignment with the divine current is increasing, it also means as a corollary that you are now coming under more influence of the spiritual heat in the system. You remember we spoke about spiritual heat and material heat in the last class. That was one of the the questions I gave you for homework. So you are now aligning and getting influenced by the spiritual heat. So that's a very good sign. So anyway, we'll just stop there. Anything else? You can ask any other question. It's there in the 6th maxim, 2nd page. If somebody wants to, it's in the last line of that particular paragraph. Okay. Lavanya?
Good evening, brother. You said truth eternal to read the knowledge. There are 2 chapters, ignorance and knowledge, knowledge, upasana, and happiness. Which one is the one
I
relevant?
knew that both are there. So when I say knowledge, I meant both.
Okay, thank you, brother.
We are all looking to cut the homework only. We don't want to expand the homework. Okay. Manikantan.
So in English, is it not given? I don't see that specific line. Is it only in Kannada?
No. I always say there are quite a few things which are more accurate in Kannada.
Oh, okay.
So
Maximum 6.
for somehow the translation seems to be slightly different in English. So in English, the last sentence in the next page. So I'm talking about the 3rd paragraph. All those contributed to the formation of our individual network, on account of which we lost consciousness of the currents that flow into every being, appearing in the man in the form of feelings. See, the way that it is translated actually gives rise to different vibrations or different way of grasping it. So I'm just reading the 3rd paragraph in the maxim 6, 3rd paragraph, last sentence. All these contributed to the formation of individual network. So what does this individual network do? The spider's web, on account of which we lost consciousness of the currents that is flowing. Which currents? The divine currents, which is starting from the Kshor. The Daivi Dhare. In Kannada, it's given as Daivi Dhare. It's very clear. It just says here currents. And sometimes when we say currents, we don't know what current. Babuji is talking about the divine currents. So we lost consciousness of the divine currents that flow not only to human beings, but to every living being. However, in human being, it manifests in the form of feelings. That's why we were emphasizing about the importance of feelings. Most critical thing that you have to pick up from any sitting is the feeling. That gives you a very good clue regarding what is happening inside. And when we talk about condition, condition is nothing but the feeling. That is what is the condition. How do you feel at any point of in time? That's why we say the condition cannot be hidden. The condition is always manifested. The only thing is we have to develop the eyes to see it. That's all. Nobody can hide their condition. Okay. Anyway, that's also what I read in this particular book, that the feeling is the most critical thing. That's what Lalaji has been talking about in this letter. Anyway, Prachi.
Namaste, brother. I have a question related to that in one of the slides where it was shown upper region and the lower region of heart. Like in the book, when it is given, our right side is the upper region and left side is the lower region. And then again at the 13th point, it is same, like how it was in the first first point. Like it is on the right side and lower is on the left side. This is what I understood. So, brother, as we as we move, uh, so if we are landing in the upper region, say at point 1, then as we go higher, we are again it is going to lower or upper, or how does it progress, brother? I just want to understand that.
See, if you look at 100 central region, efficacy of Raja Yoga, 6th chapter. Central region, efficacy of Raja Yoga, 6th chapter, the first page. It's not like in the first point. This is the 13th point that we are talking about, the central region. It is not like the first point, it is reverse of the first point.
Oh.
See, the first point is in one way, all the other three super consciousness are in other way.
Brother, you want me to flash that slide? Is it?
Yeah.
So this is a point that we have got as a question over the last 2-3 sessions. Even in Kannada session, we got the same question. Okay. Now, the answer to this is, in the Pind Pradesh, everything appears topsy-turvy than what it really is. So, what it really is what is there in the other 3 points. So, in the 13th point also, the U is low and the L is at the higher. And the third level of, the fourth level of super consciousness, so there are 4 levels, first point, 7th point, 10th point and 13th point. So 7th, 10th and 13th are very similar as far as super consciousness is concerned. But as far as the first point of super consciousness is concerned, it is a reverse of the other 3. Okay, so just remember this way. This is how the Upanishads also describe. So some confusion seems to be there because in the newer editions of the book, in the 13th point, as you say, it is printed as if it's there like in the first point.
Yes, brother.
That is what seems to be creating confusion. But if you actually look at the original book that Babuji wrote, it's always been that the other 3 super consciousness in the 6th, 7th, 10th and 13th are one way, and the first point is the other way. And that is how actually it is. Because only in the Pind Pradesh, everything appears reversed. In all other points, everything appears as it is. So when we do the work on the super consciousness, we gain access to wherever the super consciousness, you don't need to worry about it. So when you work on A and B point in the first point, A and B subpoints, the work will continue at the A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, B3 in the other 3 levels of super consciousness. They don't get reversed. A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, B3, they don't get reversed. So the work correspondingly spreads there, that's all, automatically.
Okay.
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 So I think this much is enough. I think this confusion has come about because of even the Kannada people pointed out that in the latest book, it is slightly different from what it was in the past book.
Okay.
But we don't say that again when we enter into the 13th region, everything again appears, goes back to topsy-turvy. No, it doesn't. Only in the Pinda Pradesh, everything is topsy-turvy, reverse. In every other place, it is as it is. So if you keep this concept in mind, it will be easy for you to remember.
Got it, brother. Sure.
Okay. There is no again topsy-turvy as we enter into the central region. No, it's not spoken about. It's not spoken about anywhere, in fact. Even in spiritual anatomy, it is not been spoken about. So don't worry too much about it. Okay. And the good thing is they are not going to, anyway, as far as examination is concerned, they are not going to ask you about the all these details in terms of intricacies of what actually happens to U and L in different super consciousness points. So to that extent, you will be okay. But the first point you should be very clear. But they'll generally ask this question: what are the points of super levels of super consciousness? Please elaborate. So that they might ask you the question. Okay. So if
Sure,
in
brother.
case you use the latest book and you are asked this question in the exam, what to do then? You can say that you have actually many times it's likely to be an open book question. So you can actually take the thing from the book and write it down and actually say this is from this particular edition. So there might be some changes, but this is from this edition. That is what I have copied. If you say that, I think they probably will take that into consideration.
Okay. Sure, brother. Sure. Thank you.
So everyone is putting their hands into super consciousness. Nobody wants to be in the consciousness. Everybody wants to be in the super only. Okay. Any other question? So we will take it slowly. I just saw brother's entire presentation. He wants to finish in a rush and go. 6 sessions. I think we probably will require a bit more time than that. So we are
Right.
happy to have that extra session. So there is no need to rush. So rather than deal with 4 points every session, we can just have a discussion on 2 points. That's enough actually. That will allow time for people to assimilate all the things that they need to know. Because this is very, very relevant as far as their spiritual journey is concerned. So we can just deal with 2 points at a day, per day. That is sufficient actually. Especially in the first few points, there's a lot of things which are discussed and a lot of elaboration. So no need to rush. Okay. Pankaj.
Yeah, brother. I have a very practical question. So generally, I've seen in preceptor sittings, one-on-one sittings, some of the preceptors suggest. I mean, I have heard, I haven't seen actually doing it, but some people do their experience matching, like what I have experienced and what preceptors have experienced, those kind of exercises. And some people basically don't even discuss anything. They just say like write your experience and that's it. So what is the general recommendation for abhyasis or even for everyone?
You are putting me on the spot. In general, both paths are valid. Nothing wrong with both the paths. It just depends on which perceptor you kind of catch hold of at a particular moment in time. But then, as I said, you don't need to go to the extent of matching all the experiences of what the perceptor did and what the Abhyasi experienced. There's no need to match to that extent also. As and when the perceptor's heart and the Abhyasi's heart, provided you take the sitting from the same perceptor, if these two hearts come into resonance, what you will tend to see is that more and more things will be picked up appropriately. That's what will happen in due course of time. That's also a sign of the progress. There will be more resonance. The more the resonance, more you are likely to tally. But we don't need to scratch our head just because we don't get that tallying. We don't need to scratch our head. Remember, whatever, just take a classroom example. The teacher teaches the same lesson to, say, 40 students. Each of the 40 students grasps it or catches it at their own level. And their level of catching will be dependent on so many things. It depends on their attention, it depends on the other distractions that they might be having, it depends on their emotional state, it depends on their tiredness or energy level. So many things are a factor in terms of how much of the lesson in a particular day they will catch. Likewise, when an Abhyasi comes for sitting, there are many factors which can actually influence how the Abhyasi experiences the sitting. So we don't need to tally too much about it, but it's quite good to know to help the Abhyasi develop an ability to self-reflect so that they can maintain awareness and grasp what is happening in the session of meditation. To that extent, if you don't ask any question at all, the Abhyasi is only going to say, how was the sitting? They'll say nice and they go home. They are not going to learn anything from that particular perspective. So if you help Abhyasis develop awareness and self-reflection, they will become more and more sensitive to catch what is happening in the sitting. And that's a very important component of their journey. Look at this. If the Abhyasis are not going to pick up anything in any sitting, then what's the point of writing all the books, especially spiritual anatomy towards infinity? There is no need only, no? Anyway, are not supposed to pick up anything. Why bother? That's not how it is. So you require a good balance between not to be too inquisitive, but at the same time not to be too negligent about the experience. In fact, if you were to ask from a psychology perspective, very simple, meditation gives you a peep into your subconscious and superconscious. It's only meditation that gives you a peep into your own subconscious and superconscious. In no other way, you will be able to get a peep so clearly as you do in meditation. Okay. Now, whether you want to utilize it or not, it's up to each one of us. But we would say it's better to utilize it. Why do you go for psychotherapy? You go for psychotherapy to utilize what you pick up from the subconscious to make your life better. Here also, the motto is to make your life better. Nothing wrong with it. Whatever you pick up, it will actually give you a clue regarding what is happening in your subconscious and superconscious mind. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Karthik.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So, brother, you said meditation. No, there is. I felt suddenly meditation undoes all the thing that you have already done. Any suggestion?
Meditation itself will not undo all the things that we have done. The undergoing the work of the meditation with the help of a trainer will do it. We cannot undo many things that has happened without the help of a master's transmission and cleaning. If that is the case, then there is no need for any trainer or master at all. You can just close your eyes and sit at home and meditate and everything will be undone. That doesn't occur. Like even the best of a surgeon requires some other doctor or surgeon to operate on them. Even the best of the meditators require somebody else to work on them to become better. Of course, the cooperation is absolutely necessary, but we do require the help of the trainers and the masters. Without the master's transmission, Daji writes it very clearly in Heartfulness Way. Without master, Sahaj Marg is like any other system. You have n number of systems. What makes the difference is the master of caliber and the transmission. This is what makes Sahaj Marg what it is. Remove these two, then Sahaj Marg like any other system of meditation. You have so many systems. So, answer to your question is no, it is not possible just by doing meditation. If that were to be the case, there will be no cleaning technique, there will be no prayer, there will be nothing of that kind. We'll just do meditation like people used to do in the past. So, whole point of actually having the system is that it's been refined to suit the current times. And that's what we are actually utilizing. Okay.
No. Yes, thank you, brother.
Okay. We've had good amount of questions. Anything else? Anybody else wants to ask? Last question before we wind up. Henry Satyanarayana.
Sir, Namaskara, sir. It is said that liberated souls develop their power so much that they utilize both consciousness and potentiality in any way they like. It is said in Central Region, page number 162. What does it mean, sir? Please, can you able to explain it? Sir?
See, potentiality of consciousness is in the realm of Central Region.
Okay.
So in that context, when Babaji talks about liberated souls, he is talking about those souls which are now in alignment with the center. They are swimming in the infinite ocean.
Okay.
In other words, they have crossed the realm of consciousness, which is there between the 1 to 13th point. They have entered into the 13th point and they have crossed the 7 rings of splendor, which is where the potentiality of the consciousness is. Now, since they are above that, near the center, they have the capability to use the consciousness also, potential of consciousness also, in any way that they want.
It means,
For example, those people
yeah,
say somebody is at 12th point. Now, they can utilize the consciousness in many different ways, but they cannot utilize the potentiality of the consciousness, which is there in the central region, because they are not traveled the central region.
Okay, okay.
After you have traveled a particular region, you gain control over that thing which is present in that region, which you can utilize for the journey of others. So consciousness means from the first point up to the entry of the 13th point. Potentiality of the consciousness is the journey in the central region. When you enter into the center, aligned with the center and absorb the essence of the center and are swimming in the infinite ocean, you can utilize both consciousness and the potentiality of the consciousness in whichever way you want, because now you have gained power over them, control over them. Now, to just give a small example of that, how do we actually utilize it? I just told you last time around that Lalaji writes in the 44 Whispers that you have absorbed enough of the essence of the center. Now I'm going to bring you down.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. You said.
No. And he says, I'm going to bring you down because only if I bring you down, you will be able to do my work.
Yes.
See, a person who is aligned with the center and stays there all the time, they cannot do any work because the very nature of the center is inactivity. And when you absorb the essence of the center, what will we become? That soul also becomes inactive.
Inactive.
How will they do any activity? How will they do any work for nature? So for doing the work of the nature, it is essential that they are brought few notches down.
Okay.
Now, obviously, when they are brought few notches down, they will do the work when necessary, and then after the work is done, they go back again up to where they are. So they keep moving up and down, up and down. This ability to move up and down in requirement of the work to be done is what is called as flexibility of consciousness.
Okay.
So after we go to the center and align with the center, we then have to develop flexibility of consciousness in order that we can continue to live here and work here. That was the message that you got in the Bandara, September Bandara.
Okay, sir.
What happens after merger? Okay, merger is not the end because there is life after merger.
The beginning.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when from our point of, for example, we say that when we are in the first standard, we want to finish engineering or medical or the law, whatever we want. And we say that that's the end of it. But then after you have completed your degree, then you will realize that that is the start of it. Your actual journey begins after you have got the degree.
Degree. Yes.
Not before. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly the
Very
same thing.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank
Okay.
you. Very kind of.
No
Thank
problem. So shall we stop here? We shall continue the session next time around, brother. ವೆಂಕಟಾದ್ರಿ ಅವರೇ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಷನ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಜ್ಞಾನ
Yeah. We'll do it on Thursday, brother. That's what we.
I think brother Venkatadri has some kind of tie-up on Friday, so it might be difficult. So this time we'll just catch up again on Thursday, just for this week.
Okay.
Or you want it to be every week?
I think every week is better. Friday would be
That's okay. I'm okay with it if everyone is okay. So for the next 4 weeks, still we finish this particular book, we can probably have the second session on Thursday. And then I'll just reschedule the Kannada session for Friday so that there is the same sequence going every week. Okay. So we shall have the English session this time on Thursday for the next few weeks till we finish this book. Kannada session will be on Friday. We'll just reschedule it. Okay.
Okay, brother.
Okay. Thank you very much, Appa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
brother. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.